all of a sudden the world has become focused on decarbonizing our fuel, our energy markets.
Welcome back to the Comstock Channel. I'm Marlon Bowling with you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to visit with you. And today I have Kelly Nieuwenhuis with us, and we're going to talk about corn planting, the corn industry. He's been heavily involved in all of this. He is an active farmer, and he also has a keen interest in the ethanol industry. So we'll kind of touch a few corn-related bases here. Kelly, give us an idea where you are located in Iowa.
Hey, Marlon. I'm up in the northwest corner of Iowa in O'Brien County, near the town of Primgar, Iowa.
Primgar, that's an unusual name.
It's the only one in the world. They took the
Really?
They took the first letter from the first settlers and decided how to put a word together and made the name of the town. So it's kind of unique situation.
What a story. I love that.
Mhm.
All right. So you are an active corn farmer. You're involved in other stuff too, but let's talk about the planting year. Of course, last Friday, we had USDA coming out with their WSDA report, and the markets had the big rally and everything. But it seems like there's an overall concern that this could be a very wet planting season. Some poo-poo the idea, saying that you can't have an extended rally on a wet planting season. And then some say, well, look back a few years ago and we had quite a few abandoned acres. So where do you think this one fits?
You know, every area is a little different situation. We actually were pretty fortunate. We started planting April 13th, which probably was the second earliest that we've ever planted corn. Conditions were beautiful at that time. We were in the 80s for temperature and it dry, so the dust was flying. So we got started. We're fortunate right now to have about 95% of our corn planted. We've only got one farm left to put in the ground, and but we haven't been in the field since April 26th. So conditions changed on us in a hurry and got excessively wet. So we don't know when we're going to get back in the field, but hoping it will be soon.
What do you think the percentage is in your part of the corn belt there as far as the corn that's in the ground?
Well, I'd say it's probably just roughly in that 30 to 40% range. You know, everybody does things differently nowadays. I've been a seed dealer for 25 years, and it used to be everybody got their corn first and then planted beans later. Now they do both of them at the same time, and some do their beans first. So I've got some growers that are 100% done with their beans and kind of haven't started.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't started with
Wow.
corn.
How's that working out then with the wet conditions?
You know, I think they're fine. I really haven't heard much of issues. We do treat pretty much most of our soybeans, so that helps for those early wet, cool conditions.
Well, back in the Stone Age, when I used to farm, boy, if I had a wet growing season right after I planted soybeans, we always had what they call damping off, and they
Yeah.
would just rot in the ground. So that must not be much of an issue now.
Well, you know, there's spots where I'm sure there's probably going to be some replanting. It again, like I said, it's variable. The other night we had a strip about 3-4 miles wide that had 2 to 2.5 inches of rain in a short time. A lot of ponding, but you go a few miles either way, and there was about half that amount of rainfall. So conditions are definitely variable.
So, in your opinion, do you think that we will have a lot of replanting or kind of the usual spot replanting?
You know, for my region, I'd say it's probably more the spot replanting, but I can't speak for the whole Midwest. I know it's different all over the area.
Be sure and like this video, subscribe to the video. How do you do that? Well, you click on that little bell icon down below and make sure you share this video with others as well. What did you think of those USDA numbers that came out last Friday? It surprised a few folks that they actually did cut the ending stocks for corn a little bit, but still they're over 2 billion bushels. That's quite a bit.
Yeah. But, you know, they were expecting possibly higher, and, you know, the ethanol demand has been there, and it's growing. So it's good to see more corn grind for ethanol industry. And the export markets are variable, but, you know, we still export a lot of corn to Mexico and different areas. So I think, personally, I think they're pretty accurate. And we'll just see how this planning progress goes, because we start getting here another week or so down the road, there's might be some acres switched to soybeans, but we'll see how it goes.
So this kind of dovetails with one of the other hats that you have been wearing. You had been, what was it, president of the Iowa Corn Growers?
Yeah, the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, and currently I'm a director for the our National Corn Board, and been involved in the ethanol industry for 20 plus years. Um, Past president of Siouxland Energy, 70 million gallon ethanol plant in Sioux Center, Iowa. So I've had a lot of focus on in my farming career in the biofuels industry.
What do you think the future holds here for ethanol? USDA seems to think demand will be pretty stout yet.
I think we have a very positive outlook for the biofuels industry for the future. There's a few things that need to get done to ensure that, and one of the biggest things I feel that we need to get done is carbon capture and sequestration. All of a sudden, the world has become focused on decarbonizing our fuel, our energy markets, and the quickest and largest way to lower the carbon intensity scores of the ethanol industry is through carbon capture and sequestration. So that's key to get that done, and that's going to benefit all sectors of the biofuels industry, not only the small engine markets like your E15, mid-level blends. Clear flame engines is something I'm pretty excited about. It's a new diesel-styled engine that runs on E98 ethanol that's in the testings right now, and then sustainable aviation fuel. There's huge potential there, but we just got to get to the point where our carbon intensity scores are low enough to qualify for that market.
That's interesting. So why does it have to be climate friendly, let's say, before they can use it for sustainable aviation fuel?
Well, that was part of the announcement here recently on the 40B tax credits, which are strictly for sustainable aviation fuel. Farming practices will help, and we can lower our carbon intensity scores at the farm level. But the largest move for carbon intensity scores will be through carbon capture and sequestration. If we get that done, there's a large percentage of ethanol plants that will instantly qualify for sustainable aviation fuel. There's a lot of potential in a lot of different ways, and that this whole carbon situation is new to everybody. So we're all in the learning process yet, and I definitely have to say I'm learning a lot day by day on how we can get there. But farming practices will be a part of it, but carbon capture and sequestration will be a huge part of it.
Well, a lot of farmers out there I have heard say, well, if you can make aviation fuel out of ethanol, just do it. Why does it have to be sustainable? But it appears that the government is using the carrot and stick approach where they say, well, you might, I'll underline the word might, be able to get a premium if you qualify for environmentally friendly corn production or something. Is that the deal, that they're just trying to entice people with the hope of making a premium on that?
Well, there is potential there. I have to say that. I've been working with what Continuum Ag. It's a group that is working on low carbon, lowering carbon intensity scores, and through biofuels. And there's a lot of good farming practices that would already qualify. I actually did my carbon intensity scores on my farms, and what we've been doing for several years is we've reduced our tillage a lot. We basically do almost zero fall tillage on our farming operation. We've gone to a one-pass vertical tillage, and we use commercial fertilizer on most of our farms, nitrogen, but our yield potentials are pretty high. So a lot of these scores are based off of the GREET models feedstock calculator, which will show that every farm has a carbon intensity score. And after doing some work with Continuum Ag, my CI score on our normal farming practices that we've been doing for 8 years is 8.5. And according to the GREET feedstock calculator, the average corn farm is 29.1. So I already qualify for a premium through the biofuels industry if this gets done. But there's nothing that's settled yet. So we got a lot of work to do and it's mainly based off the 45Z tax credits. So we do have some work to do to get that done right. So the carbon credits down to the farmer level will be potential.
Doesn't that make you uneasy, knowing that the Treasury Department is going to be looking over your shoulder at every little move you make?
It does. This is the absolute first time ever that the U.S. Treasury Department has been part of agriculture as far as biofuels are concerned. We've always worked with the USDA and the EPA and those government organizations, but now for the first time since there are tax credits involved, the U.S. Treasury is going to be part of it. And the 40B announcement on the new updated GREET model for 40B sustainable aviation fuels tax credits talked about bundling farming practices of no-till, cover crops, and enhanced nitrogen application. That bundling situation doesn't work for very many farmers. I think I've heard there's like 1% of the farmers would qualify for that right now. But, there were some good things in that announcement on the 40B tax credits for sustainable aviation fuel. And one was the indirect land use change. They actually lowered that, which we've known for years that we've been producing more and less. And so we knew that land use change was smaller than it used to be. And then also they recognize carbon capture and sequestration as a carbon reduction part of the biofuels industry. So just having that recognized was key. So like I said, we got to work on the 45Z and make sure there's not a farming bundling situation, because as farmers know, one practice doesn't fit all. I'm not against no-till or cover crops, or I use a nitrogen stabilizer already, but they don't work in all parts of the Midwest or corn growing and geographic areas. Southern areas work really well for no-till and cover crops. In northern areas, it's harder to establish cover crops, and it's really harder to plant no-till because our soils are heavier, wetter normally, and don't warm up as quick. So we need to find a way, and in my mind, for the 45Z tax credits, the best way to determine a farm's qualification will be on their carbon intensity scores. Everybody has one, so we just got to make sure we get that designed to be in the correct way.
Well, what do you say to fellow farmers that come up to you and say this is a very slippery slope that they are reluctant to get on, because what's to keep the government, the Treasury Department, from saying, well, if you're not meeting a certain environmental guideline, we're not going to back your lender to give you credit or something like that?
Yeah, like I said, this is new to everyone, and it's a work in progress. I also recognize the fact that this isn't mandated. If you're a farmer that wants to share your data, get a carbon intensity score to qualify through the biofuels industry, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Like I said, there's a lot of research that needs to be done, a lot of more information that needs to be shared. The main goal is to try to share the correct information, the accurate information, and see where this takes us. There's no doubt that energy is focused on low carbon scores. That they're trying to force electrification down our throats, and I don't think there's a lot of people in support of that personally. And biofuels has a huge potential, but we just got to get our carbon intensity scores to the level where we qualify. Um, you know, right now there's a sustainable aviation fuel plant that's up and running in Georgia, but they're importing Brazilian ethanol because they qualify. Well, we could qualify instantly with a carbon capture and sequestration pipeline getting approved. And then, that's the first step. And then as we go down the road, we can work on the farmers qualifying for the tax credits down to their level. But it takes farmers to have the data and the willingness to share that to get to that point.
So, from the ethanol plant perspective, you've been involved in that. How do they do that? I mean, do they have to segregate the ethanol from, the carbon capture crowd versus the traditional farmers, or is it all prorated on their output? How do they go about calculating that?
Well, it could go farmer by farmer, but being involved in the ethanol plant and the plant I was involved in for the last 10 years plus has been focused on carbon intensity scores because we've been shipping 100% of our ethanol to California for quite a few years, and now recently we're shipping some to Canada also because there are areas in the country and in the world that focus on low carbon fuel standards, and they pay you a premium for your low carbon fuels. And there's other ways, we've spent millions of dollars at the plant I was involved in with carbon capture or CHP, which is combined heat and power. It's a huge turbine that produces our electricity for our plant. We've got steam letdown turbine, which also produces a small amount of electricity for our plant. We've got White Fox Technologies, which is another technology that helps the efficiency of production of ethanol. It uses filters to capture the ethanol instead of steam. It reduces water use and it lowers carbon intensity scores. The plant I was involved in, we didn't dry any distiller's grain. So everything we produced for feed for livestock was wet. So that helped for our carbon intensity scores. And like I said, every plant has a carbon intensity score. And the ones that are focused on lowering theirs, they're qualifying for these low carbon fuel standards. And I think it's roughly 60 plants that are signed up to be part of this carbon capture and sequestration pipeline. That will instantly lower their carbon intensity scores by 30 points, which is a huge move. We've spent millions of dollars at Siouxland Energy and lowered our carbon intensity scores by 12 to 15 points, where this one project could lower it 30 points. And that's huge to get the ethanol industry to qualify for the sustainable aviation fuel. But it would also benefit all the other sectors of the biofuels industry.
Just going to say it would also impact soybean growers too, right?
Yep. The soybean production and renewable diesel, they they're very good at or very qualified for sustainable aviation fuel through the soybean production and oil production. So it's a huge opportunity for rural America and the ag industry. We just got to make it happen.
Well, with your work on the promotion board, the corn promotion board, demand is everything. You don't want to rule out any kind of demand at all. And it seems like it's getting harder and harder to kind of push the exports overseas. China has been kind of reluctant here lately. So any outlets we can find would be great. But do you think we have a lot of untapped potential overseas?
Well, I do. You start hearing more and more countries are focusing on low carbon fuel standards. And so there is potential for export markets. And just recently, the export markets have gone up. Just recently, India, that country, we have our first U.S. Grains Council facility in India. And the potential for exports in India are all of a sudden becoming a pretty positive opportunity. So, yeah, there's opportunities through exports. There's a lot of opportunities domestically through biofuels. And that's one of the things, not only the Iowa corn growers, but the national corn growers, our main focus is working on new demand for the corn we produce because corn farmers are good at what we do. I tell the story over the last 30 years, we've averaged a 2 bushel a year increase in production. So that's 60 bushel an acre or 90 million acres. That's 5.4 billion bushels. And that's basically what we grind through ethanol today. But that increase in production is going to continue to climb. So we need to find markets for those bushels. And we feel pretty strongly that they will either be through biofuels or new uses through biofuels. So this is pretty much still untapped to its total potential, but we'll keep working on that demand growth through biofuels.
Kelly, I sure enjoyed talking with you. Thank you for all your insight today. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience from all angles here for the corn industry. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure we'll be talking down the road as well as the growing season progresses here. We'll kind of compare notes. But thanks for enlightening us on how everything works behind the scenes. And I hope you have a great growing season.
Well, thanks, Marlon. Appreciate the opportunity to share the message.
Yeah, you're a great advocate. So thank you very much. Kelly Nieuwenhuis with us here. That'll do it for this particular episode. And we do thank you for joining us. For producer Brianne Hendrickson, I'm Marlon Bowling. We'll catch you next time on the Comstock channel. Thanks for joining us on our Comstock YouTube channel. Don't forget you can also find us on Facebook and TikTok as well. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and or options is substantial, and each investor and or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.